everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to our continual coverage of the top and best games of 2019. And of course, we haven't played every game, but we played quite a few of them. So I want to talk today about top 10 distinctive themes of gaming. Before we do that, I want to do a quick shout out to some of our Kickstarter backers from 2019. Well, thank you to Nikki Stevens and Captain Rennie from BritishVSPirates.com. To Game Toppers LLC, making some fantastic table games that you can put on top of your table toppers, essentially to put on top of your tables. And Von Hennessy, who says he's thankful that we introduced him to gaming as a serious hobby. So thank you guys for backing our show. Now, distinctive themes here. So I tried to pick games that I thought had something different to offer theme-wise. Sometimes the games are amazing. As we get higher up the list, you'll notice that on a few of them. Sometimes the games are okay, or I don't think any of these games are necessarily bad, but I wanted to see something different. That's what I'm looking for. I have enough games about trading in the Mediterranean, enough games about zombies, enough games about generic fantasy, and enough games about building a castle for a king who doesn't really appreciate me and give me a raise. And so that's what these 10 games are. So we're going to get started, and some of these are weird, and 10 is no exception to that. And that is Tooth Fairy. Well, never mind. Let's talk about 10 first. You'll never guess what it is.
Number 10.
So my surprise pick for number 10 is Tooth Fairy. Tooth Fairy, the Tooth Fairy game, I guess, more specifically. This is from Peterson Games, who is probably best known for Cthulhu Wars. Now, this looks pretty disgusting, as you saw the cover here with the fairy pulling the tooth out. That's pretty gross. And the game actually comes with quite a few plastic teeth. It's worth getting just for that regard. There's actually several games you can play with it, but the theme of the Tooth Fairy is collecting teeth. Tell me how many other games have that theme. You can't really, so therefore this is on the list just by sheer nature of its theme. Number 10, the Tooth Fairy game.
Number 9.
Kevin Bacon. In so many movies, and in this movie, he almost got eaten by giant worms. But that's actually not what this game is based on, except it is. Number 9 is Terror Below, which was not called Tremors for copyright reasons, but is essentially Tremors. In this game, there are giant worms that are popping up all over the board, and you are driving around in multiple vehicles trying not to attract them, but to collect their eggs and sell them to government agencies for nefarious purposes. By nefarious purposes, I mean money. It's a silly game. You're running around trying to avoid these giant worms that are coming up out of the ground. And you're driving around in trucks and motorcycles and all kinds of stuff. You can even fight the worms. You'll probably lose, but you just might beat them if you somehow happen to be afraid of the government and have an arsenal of guns in your basement. Like I said, the IP here is not existing, but when you play it, and if you've seen Tremors, you're playing Tremors, the board game. It is a lot of fun. I like this theme. Again, not a theme that's in games very often, so number 9, Terror Below.
Number 8.
Number 8 is a weird theme, and it sounds like the plot of a movie, really, where there's a man who can save the world, but we got to figure out how to get him to do so. So we're going to go inside his dreams and figure that out. And this is the theme of Comanauts. So Plaid Hat does not fool around when they make games these days. They go big or go home. Sometimes they do go home. Sometimes the games aren't fantastic. And I might argue that Comanauts is not a fantastic game per se, but the theming of it is really well done. They took the book thing that they've introduced in other games, where you are flipping through a book and you are trying to go through this scientist's psyche, essentially trying to, solve his problems. He's bullied, or girlfriend broke up with him, all that stuff. But by going through his subconscious, which is like a dream-like thing, and you're going through as a team, and you fight bad guys, and you're trying to fight against his insecurities eventually to get him to give you this thing to keep the world in a better place. The writing is actually pretty good for this game, and it is a really cool, interesting theme. So my number 8, Comanauts.
Number 7.
NumberSeven was actually my top 10 of the year. This one sounds like a boring, mundane theme, but it got more interesting as you played through the game, and that is the King's Dilemma. The King's Dilemma, which looks like the king has a headache here. He ate too much ice cream. But what this is about is you are a power behind the throne. You are a group of people who are trying to manipulate the government. Excuse me. That's a very crazy government. The government to do what you want them to do, and all kinds of really tough, morally gray, well, sometimes not gray at all, sometimes it's pretty black and white in my opinion, decisions, and you are arguing back and forth on how to deal with these decisions. Now, you have a different preference, not because of personal beliefs, but because of your faction might want you to do something. I found some iron, or some new cool metal. Should we turn it into weapons, or should we turn it into medical use? And you decided as a group. But what you decide affects not only this game, but future games. It's really well written, and it's not just, it's a medieval setting of sorts that may or may not have some fantastical elements in it. You'll see. Play it. King's Dilemma, NumberSeven.
NumberSix.
NumberSix here is the weirdest theme on this list by far. So I'm playing Carcassonne. I put Carcassonne back up on the shelf, trapping inside those poor meeples who are tired of me doing this, so they fight back. And that's what this game is about. It's called Save the Meeples. And in this game, you are playing the meeples who have revolted against humans. Honestly, I own more board games than most people do. And if I heard that my meeples were revolting, I still would not be worried. But in this game, somehow, so what they're doing is they get on these trains, they go to different areas, they work at those areas, then they will do one of two things. They will either build rocket ships and go to the moon or some planet where they will live happily, or they'll fight against humans, where they probably will lose, but they might capture a few of them. That's a weird theme, but you gotta say it's unique, right? My NumberSix, Save the Meeples.
NumberFive.
NumberFive, there's a lot of these big games. Eric Lang is trying to hit every single pantheon that there is, right? He's going through them, but one pantheon he hasn't got to yet is the Aztec one, so someone else beat him to it, John Claudius, and that's with Mezzo. So Mezzo here has a cool theme in which you are one of these gods with a bunch of followers from the Aztec thing, and while it looks kind of like we're going to fight all over the board, it's more of an area control, almost a little bit of a take that element to it. And it's a little smaller than it looks, but it also is a pretty big, cool game. Amazing miniatures, a fun back and forth as you're sending out your followers and priests to different areas, and fight for control of these regions because you want people to worship you. You want to learn about Aztec gods? Play Mezzo, my NumberFive.
NumberFour.
Science! Yeah, well, there's always a science game on this list, I think, every year. You know, this Genius Games is going to keep making good science games. What are we going to say? NumberFour is Periodic Game of Elements. Now, this is actually not the first, or even probably the 10th game based on the periodic table, because people always want to use the periodic table because it looks like a game board. But most games do not use it well. I can only think of one other. The Compound, it did a good job of it. But periodic table of elements, you are moving your things around, your pieces on the board, going in different directions by taking actions, and the game also has some scientific learning in it because the folks from Genius Games work really hard at putting science into their games, but they also, and this is a rare thing, put fun into the games too. So they're fun and educational. I know! You would never think that's possible, but with every Genius game it is, and this one is a really entertaining one of manipulating your piece around the board, it's almost like a race, trying to get to specific spots. Really cool game, Periodic Game of Elements.
NumberThree.
Again, this list is all about cool themes that I hardly ever see, and NumberThree is a good example of that. NumberThree is Vinyl. Vinyl is a game about collecting records or LPs or whatever Now people say they're collecting vinyl. Boy, as a kid we called them records. It's still confusing to me. But in this game you are collecting different record albums, and what's really cool about this game, and you can't necessarily see it in this particular picture, but the game comes with tons of cards that look like covers of records. They're all made up, of course. But you are collecting these through a pretty simplistic way. You know, you're getting different resource cards, using those resource cards, turning them in to get collections of records. And they did such a good job at making this look realistic, and the whole thing's about having a nice collection, a varied collection, or a bunch of collection of the same style of music. And I like this concept. I love music anyway. I love the idea of collecting music, and that's what this game is, and it treats it with a very loving care and touch, and I think a lot of people will like it. That's my number 3, vinyl.
Number 2.
I don't like this game that much, and it still made number 2 on my list because the theming was that strong. Remember at the very beginning I said I was tired of zombie games, but you know what there's not enough of? Honestly, Frankenstein games. My number 2 is Abomination, Heir of Frankenstein. There's another one from Plaid Hat. Plaid Hat knows how to make these really strong, cool games. And this game, even though I'm not a big fan of it because I think it's too long for what it is, a little too random for how long it is, but the theme definitely comes to life. You are as stupidly evil, not evil, well, I guess you're evil, you're a bad guy. You're collecting body parts to make your own Frankenstein. Where do you get body parts? From the cemetery. You shouldn't be stealing parts from dead bodies. From the hospital. You shouldn't be stealing parts from the hospital. In a dark alley where you kill someone. That's even worse. And that's what you do in this game. You put the body parts together. But this is not a game where you can kind of abstract yourself. You're like, well, you know, this could be any theme. No, this is Frankenstein theme. And it's dark and it's gory and it's certainly here. And if you like that style thing, you got it. And I got to call this out because of the cool, interesting theme of it. That's Abomination, Heir of Frankenstein.
And finally, number 1.
I talked about generic fantasy at the beginning of this too. I'm getting tired of generic fantasy. I want to see interesting fantasy. In fact, I would like to see fantasy. I often am looking for fantasy based on King Arthur and his knights. There's not a lot of it, really. This game took a different spin on that, and this is Tainted Grail from Awakened Realms. Now, their games are also always full of interesting and fascinating theming. This one is no exception. It's a dark Avalon where I don't know where King Arthur is. I don't know where Morgana is or Merlin, or do they exist in this game? You got to play it to find out. But you are a backup hero, a guy who was trained by the hero, well, a guy who was friends with the hero. Then the heroes disappeared, and now the people of the village are like, well, I guess go see what you can find out, and that's you. And yet you'll go through. There's so much story in this game. There's so much going on in this game. It is a fascinating back and forth style where you fight horrific monsters. You see interesting sights. You see grandiose and horrifying things as you play through this, all in search of, well, something, but also read the name of the game. It's really cool. There's just so much theme throughout the pages of this. The whole game kind of revolves around it. I recommend Tainted Grail. That's my number 1. Alrighty, so what are games I didn't mention? What are distinctive themes? There really is a lot of them, so don't get me wrong. I could have mentioned freshwater fly, where you do fly fishing. There's not many things like that. I could have also mentioned The Menace Among Us, in which you are kind of out in space. There's a lot more games like that one, but what are other games that I should have mentioned? Let me take a look and see. If there's no Arthur or Merlin, how is it Avalon? Who said there was no Arthur or Merlin? Who said there is? Play the game and find out. But it's definitely the land of Avalon. Camelot's in it. I can give you that much. All right. Well, let's see real quick here. No one has said any games. Blah, blah, blah. Parks. Parks is cool. Although it's not actually the first game about parks. There's Trekking the National Parks. But Parks is a pretty cool theme. I have not yet played the game, but I've heard good things about it. So that is certainly a good one and one to consider. Wingspan, yeah, sure, Wingspan's an interesting theme, and I thought about putting that on the list. It's a distinctive theme about birds, although I would argue that the theme doesn't come through the game as strongly. I love the theme about collecting birds, but it's an engine builder, and while I think the bird theme is cool, you probably could have replaced it with something else and it might have worked. Horrified, that's a good one, and that Horrified is a distinctive theme, if only because most horror games are scary or spooky or gross, and this is none of them. It uses the fun, entertaining, I guess not fun, well, I guess they're fun, I don't know, the Universal Studios monsters. Clip Cut Park doesn't have a distinctive theme, who cares about that? That's a distinctive mechanism where you're actually cutting stuff. That's why that one didn't make the list, also I haven't played it yet. Well, that's all I'm seeing from the audience. So I'll give you all another few seconds. Will I see anything? Distinctive themes is very important to me. This is one of my favorite categories to talk about because while I like Euro games and I like games that have no theme in them at all, I definitely like to point these out. Trapper Keeper the game, that's true. That's actually a pretty cool theme. A drafting style game where you have a little Trapper Keeper. I can actually see mine right over there. And you open it up and you're drafting report cards and all kinds of nonsense in there. Nancy Narking, I guess so. I can't say the theme's really that strong when this game is literally a remake of another game, Ankh-Morpork. So they just changed the theme. So I would argue that that couldn't be that distinct if you do that. Cthulhu Death May Die? No. Point Salad? No. War of the Worlds? Yeah, that's true. That's one of the first War of the Worlds games that was just, set on the book itself. So that's cool. Alrighty, well, I'll jump out here. I'm going to be back live not very long from now, 40 minutes. Me and Z are going to be taking a look at the best games of 2014. Is it 14, 10, 11, 12, 13? Yes, 14. Is 2014 as good as 12? Or will it be like 2013? We'll have to see. Come back and join us then. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel. Have fun gaming.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.